We're constantly told to love ourselves, set boundaries, and find healthy relationships. But what does that actually look like in practice? How do you build self worth if you've never truly felt it? What's the difference between real confidence and performative self assurance? And what makes a relationship healthy, not just tolerable? Today on the Grateful Podcast, we're diving into the roots of who we are and how we relate with none other than Talia Bombola, the confidence and assertiveness specialist. Talia is a licensed psychotherapist, mentor, and speaker who helps individuals rewire their relationships, starting with the one they have with themselves. Today, we're getting real, no fluff, just the truth about what it takes to become the kind of person who feels worthy, confident, and ready to love, not out of need, but out of choice. Talia, welcome to the show.
That was the best intro I've ever heard in my life. Wow. I feel like there's the episode right there. Thank you.
Awesome. That's a great
Wow, I am
start.
honored. I could cry. That was amazing. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm super excited to have you on the show. As we said before, a connection through Jason Smith, one of my
Yes.
favorite episodes I've done so far. So definitely uh, high expectations, high.
No pressure.
So you better live up to it. uh,
Oh, I hope I will.
the first place I want to start is that as an ambitious person, I've been presented with the idea that I have to choose between either having a healthy and fulfilling relationship with the people in my life or my
Mm.
work. Is this a sacrifice I have to make, or is there a way to have abundance between the two?
Don't think it's a sacrifice that you have to make. I think it's a sacrifice you could choose to make. And I'm highlighting the difference because there's a sense of agency and ownership in our decisions. And if we're only listening to what other people tell us to do or what their path may have been, it may have been true for the people giving you that advice. They did have to choose or were forced into one or the other. I would say it's most true. It might not, the business or the relationship might not be at 110% if you're trying to give all of yourself to both at the exact same time. So being realistic about the expectations and like, are you okay with the good enough, which is our goal in therapy, relationship, and the good enough, meaning it covers everything you need and most of what you want business. Because really, at the end of the day, what's the point of growing to those levels is to slow down and be able to enjoy it with the people we're around. And we have to be honest with ourselves how much abundance of money do we really want and need, and how much abundance of time do we really want and need? Because time is the one thing we can never get back or make more of. It's like the most precious resource. I would say that's the priority for the abundance. Money comes and goes, and we can always borrow it, but you can never borrow time.
Such a good point. Do you think that we have to go too far to either side to find that balance?
Some people choose to. Yeah, I know I was that person. I am I allowed to like say a swear word on here?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. So my mentor years ago, I have a baby, but my mentor years ago, I was like so gung ho, ambitious, and she's like, "You, it's not time to be balls to the wall. It's time to be like boobies to the baby." So the transition between like being incredibly ambitious and like I have to go on the grind all the time obviously didn't translate into parenthood because it's
Mm.
not a business or an adult relationship. It's like this very needy, dependent creation that you're responsible for everything for, obviously, and like shaping their psyche. So I think some people try to approach relationships the same way they approached business, and they go in
Hmm.
super hard in one direction and they shift into the relationship and they're like solution focused and I'm going to fix it and I'm going to schedule my dates, and it's like that's not how relationships are living organisms. That's not how it's going to unfold. And the idea is that it's nourishing you and growing your life, not costing you or making you make sacrifices. So some people do make that pendulum swing of going way too hard and then they burn out. The ideal is that it's like a, I would say kind of whatever those, they used to have them a lot in the movies in the 90s, but it's like that little thing that was on a lot of the people's desks, and it's like a set of four or five metal spheres and you click one on one side and it has the response on the other side. I feel like that's more how people can balance it, that it ebbs and flows rather than 100% to the point of burnout and then 0% and then 100% in the other direction. So trying to find again like that 80% balance in both. And it might not be the season to have both at the same time. Maybe we're being called to work on our business while we're without partner or have no desire to date. And then maybe we slow down a bit in our business and rest on the abundance, whatever that is, time or money, in our personal relationship. And then we're not taking the extra client or booking the extra podcast because we found someone we'd rather be with instead. So I think to have a full answer, yes, some people choose to go too hard in one direction or the other, but the ideal for sustainability would be giving as much as you can without sacrifice of yourself to both at any given point, as long as it feels good.
Such a good answer. I love that. One thing I've found is that people that do end up burning out in their work and going too hard and then burning out, that like cycle we were talking about, it's similar in relationships. Is that true in your findings as well?
Yes, personally and professionally, I think we reach a point where, especially if we're an overfunctioner in our work life or our professional life, and we like performance, we like achievements, we like milestones, we don't always have those in our romantic relationships. And if we are the overfunctioner or the really driven one, we might find ourselves partnering with somebody who's more chill, more go with the
Hmm.
flow, not driven, but maybe not as much. And that can lead to burnout faster if we're doing the majority lion's share of the emotional labor or the communication labor or the social labor of a relationship because we're so good at it. Our partner might not take it off our plate or realize we're trying to get them to take it off our plate because they're like, but you like it, you do it, and you're so good at it. Why would I have thought you didn't want that? And usually the partners I work with who are overfunctioners are like, but I was modeling for you what I really wanted you to do for me. Like, why didn't you pick
Yeah.
up on that hint? And then they catch themselves and they go, I would have known. Ugh. And I'm like, that's where like projection and assuming other people are going to think the way that you do comes into play. And it creates more of that dynamic in a relationship where people burn out or overfunction because they've learned or they read so many self-help books and see all of those sides of social media. This is how it should be. Well, did we ever check in with your partner that that's how they think it should be too? Or is it just, here's the agenda, I'm giving it to both of us? Like, did you not get your script in the mail? Why aren't you following your lines? And the partner's like, I just wanted someone to spend time with. Like, I don't want to do this like mass self-improvement plan. So I do think we have that ideal that whatever worked in business works in relationships. But again, in our education and in our business, that's us mostly controlling the outcome. I used to be a professor and I would tell my students at the beginning of every semester, you have an A, it's your responsibility to keep it there. Prove that you have that, do the work, do the quizzes, do the papers. And coming in with that mindset was very comforting to some, but very, this might be a dramatic word, but like imprisoning or like negatively containing for others because they felt this pressure when that's again probably a projection. It's just a sentence. Like you actually have the grade that most people want. Showing up and making sure you're doing the work is how you keep it there. But if you slack off, or obviously life happens, and the students would email me like, hey, can I have an extension? And I'm understanding within reason. But there is a need to not expect the same pressure, or I can get this grade, or I can make this amount. You're in a relationship with another person that's a living being. They have their own, ideally, if it's not codependent, they have their own wants and needs. They have their own psyche and their own goals. And if we're too focused on this feeling that most everybody feels in the beginning of a relationship where we're like, we are one, I love them, I'm obsessed with them, I just want to see them all the time, like gaze into their eyes, we lose focus that they are their own person. And it becomes
Hmm.
like this in a relationship rather than like interdependent. I'm on my path always, you're on your path always. And there's times where we're on one path or the other, or we join in the middle. But ideally, we're not losing our own path along the way or forcing the other onto our path, kind of how people approach business or scholastic goals.
Yeah, yeah, it's interesting. I so on the concept of relationships, I predict that one of the biggest struggles for my generation is going to be romantic relationships. I can't tell you how many of my friends have had girlfriends that only existed on Snapchat or like they would only text them on Snapchat, and uh, I think it's going to be a mess. And I'm wondering if you share that idea and what do you think people in my generation can do to prepare for this and limit the inevitable catastrophe?
Wonderful question. I do share the same fear as you, and I do see it come true. I'm seeing more colleges offer life skills classes or relationship skills classes for freshmen and transfer students, which is, I think, a wonderful thing to be able to have on the curriculum. Part of me wishes it was required, but also that part of me wishes it was required for everybody, no matter the age, because a lot of us only know how to function with what we see on social media, which is far more rampant and prevalent nowadays than it was a few decades ago. And we are thinking whatever we grew up in our household system is normal. So if we have an ideal template where our parents, and this might change over the generations too, how did your parents meet? Oh, they met at a grocery store. Oh, they met in person. Oh, they met at this. And then there's this new, oh, they met on Hinge. They met on Tinder. They met on a dating app or a dating site. And I think in the very near future, majority people will have met somewhere in the online space or through a friend they met in the online space. And I think the way to work against that or not solely rely on it is understanding that the internet can be one place to meet people, but it's not the only place to meet people, and still practicing those skills of going up and talking to somebody in person. So the reason that they're not, or the reason for the excuse, I guess, of I'm not going to meet anybody, or it's just easier online. Of course, it's easier online. It's far more convenient because they're in your back pocket all the time. But we all saw Her with Joaquin Phoenix that came out in 2010, and it didn't end well. And we've seen other movies that kind of allude to what's going to happen, and I think foreshadow that your generation especially, if you're able to balance in real life and online friends and be real about what a relationship's purpose is in your life. If you really just want somebody to chat with or text with and burn time, keep it online. Like, I don't have a problem with that, but I don't think it's going to translate well if somebody has more traditional or like in real life relationship expectations, and then they're noticing they don't have the social skills to take it from online to in person, or they're under the impression they never will need to and it can only ever stay online. It's like the new age long distance relationship. Even if you lived in the same city with them, the phone makes it like
Yeah,
long distance. So
so
I will be
true.
curious to see what the research is going to be in the next 5 to 10 years, which I am more, if it's not evident already, I like the blend of the art and science of psychotherapy as a therapist. So I like to suggest interventions based on what I would say soundly collected data shows, not like biased sample sizes. And if we're
Hmm.
only polling people that are like in this age bracket on this one app, it's already biased. So we don't,
Right.
I don't think, have enough studies that have been done. Those are good to poll, but we want to have more of an overall idea of like multiple generations. What would the advice be? My advice would be make sure you're not losing those social skills in person, and make sure you're not only thinking everything's going to be online. A majority will. So definitely pick a
Hmm.
career that is like AI based or tech based if you want, just in your back pocket, but don't stop from pursuing your dreams. Same thing in a relationship. If you want to chat online, that's fine. But if you want that in person love or connection, eventually you're going to have to like leave your house or your dorm and go outside and talk to
Hmm.
people. And hey, how's your day going? Oh, what's the weather like? I always tell people to use a crossword puzzle. So that would be my advice to your generation, is get good at crosswords. So if you're out in public and you feel socially awkward, it's a way to bridge talking to a person with a purpose, and it lowers the anxiety.
Hmm.
So you can ask like, hey, I know this might be weird. Frame it, fall on the knife first. Like, this is totally weird, or it's so awkward to ask, but could you help me with this? I have no clue. And even if the person is like, I'm not good at it, then you can struggle together. And at worst, you make a new friend. At best, you end up dating the person, like, depending. So I think it's a good way to break the ice, because it's something that takes the pressure off the social interaction.
Crosswords. That's so creative. I love that. How'd you
And
come
you
up
can do
with
it
that?
solo, and it's not. I did it because I like crosswords personally, and back when I was dating and I was out in public, I didn't want to be scrolling on my phone, because I had
Mm.
heard from other colleagues who did dating coaching also and had seen it like in real life. It just doesn't make the person look approachable. But if you see a person reading a book, or if you see them doing a crossword, which is like a mutually engaging activity, then you could go up to them. Oh, I loved that book. Or controversial. Oh my gosh, I can't believe you made it that far. I hated that book. I couldn't get past the first chapter. It opens up a conversation more than seeing somebody do this. I don't know what you're doing. You could be reading a book on that, and maybe Kindle would be the exception to technology piece of it, but it is more of a conversation starter than looking at somebody and going, oh, they're already otherwise engaged with something. And I would say personal experience, and then giving it as homework to clients who would come back and be like, it worked, like the crossword worked. We ended up sitting there for 45 minutes and doing it together, and our next dates, whatever the day is. Or the college students would be like, I made a new friend in my sorority because of it. So and
Yeah.
it works because it's not just about dating, it's about connection. Yeah.
This idea of uh, interacting with people in a real life environment and building those social skills, it seems very tied to one of your other things I wanted to talk about, which is self worth. If you have self worth, I think you're going to respect the fact that you need to build these skills. You need to have real life interactions with people. So, the first question I have for you on this topic of self worth is, what's the difference between confidence and self worth?
So, confidence is the belief in one's abilities. It's more of a sense of self assuredness or skill level, I would say, depending on what the specific topic it's being applied to. So, somebody could be very confident in public speaking, giving like a keynote speech, but they may not be as confident doing like an improv class. So, similar skill because it's forward facing, but there is nuance to it. And then the difference between that and having self worth was your question, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, so self-worth is your belief that you have inherent worth and value. You're worthy just as you are because you are, no need to prove it. And that differs like subsection from self-esteem, which is the kind of regard you hold yourself in. So I view in my research, self-esteem and self-worth are in correlated, and they usually go up at the same time. So if I have high or higher self-worth, I'm more likely to have higher self-esteem. And similarly, on the converse, if I have low self-worth, I'm more likely to have low self-esteem. That's not always true across the board. There's always exceptions. However, the relationship we have with our own value and our own worth and the regard we hold ourselves in will affect our confidence. And if I
right.
don't have the level of self worth or esteem I desire or I'm working towards, I don't yet have the confidence in all areas I might desire, or I wouldn't consider myself an overall confident person, most likely. Even if there's certain areas I could still acknowledge I have confidence in, it may not translate. So I like to view those as kind of complementary parts when I work with clients or when I'm doing podcast interviews to be able to talk about it, because we hear those words thrown around so
Hmm.
much. And I'm grateful for social media for giving so much exposure to a lot of these terms. But there's also a part of me that's like, these are terms mostly in therapy for a reason, because sometimes people hear it and they weaponize it or they run with it or they in a great way sometimes make their own definition, or they get too far off like the semantic definition of it, and I'm like, yeah, that's an example of it. But for the average person, having those views and those definitions is really helpful. That's something I have always nerded out on. Is I like to call it, it is what it's called, but I also like to call it the operational definition. So what is that in purpose? And you could have this is from my research background, you could have a variable, but if you don't operationally define it, you don't really know what you're going to be testing in your research. So if you say you're
Hmm.
having a bad day, what does bad mean to you is your operational definition. Your definition and my definition may differ. Neither one is right or wrong. They're different. Even the word different has its own operational. So we could go down the rabbit hole with that, but that's something else I want to make sure that I leave the listeners with when they're making those definitions. You may also have a separate definition that could be a sub bullet. So whenever you're learning new words in psychology, look at the dictionary definition and then look at some of the examples they give, and then add whatever you would define it as on there. Confidence is going up to somebody and asking them what book they're reading. That totally applies. We might not find that in the dictionary, but that's an example of the definition of confidence.
Is it a two-way street? Does having more confidence lead you to more self-worth? Like more self-worth leads you to having more confidence?
Actually love that framing. I would agree. Right off the cuff, hearing that like how it's landing, I would say it is a two-way street. I would say they do act upon each other, and there would be, I think, benefit in highlighting. Sometimes people downplay that two-way relationship of like, I have high self-worth, I have high self-confidence, and they're afraid of being seen as egotistical, or
Hmm.
they're afraid of being thought of as narcissistic. And I know that's a very heated, contentious word or thrown around quite easily. But the reality of it is in self psychology, which is one of the areas I practice from in analysis, everybody has narcissistic traits. Have you ever met a toddler? Everything is about them. That's from Piaget's theory of like egocentrism. Everything is about them. They think everything is because of them, for better or worse. So if things are going well, it's my doing. If things aren't going well, or somebody's in a certain mood, or my parents are sad, it's my fault. So being mindful of that when we are interacting with kids is a good note. And that level of egocentrism ideally is how I teach parents and how I teach adults when they're going back and like even reparenting themselves. It's the goal to understand that at certain times, you will be the most important person in the room, but how do you handle it with grace and with humility when you are and when you're not, so that anybody else around you wouldn't really know the difference? And I think there's a need for, if you have high self-esteem, high self-worth, and high self-confidence, how do you carry yourself in a way that did you ever read the book Rainbow Fish, or have you heard of
No.
it? Okay, it's like an 80s and 90s book. I don't love it entirely because the premise is this fish has these beautiful scales. The cover is like iridescent scales. And somewhere along the way, the other fish is like, well, I don't like that you have all that and you should share it with everybody else. So I'm not going the like staunch rainbow fish story, but the idea that if we have something and we choose, that would be my rewrite, we choose to give it to others, it's in a way that it's like, hey, I heard you talked about that. What if you did this? Like you kind of offer the confidence rather than force it on someone or make somebody feel small so you can feel big. And that's with parenting too. When we do too much for kids, it boosts our self-esteem. It takes away from theirs. And that's when parents hear that, they're like, oh, and I'm like, it's not on purpose. It's our own stuff we have to work through. When we're having that two-way street and that relationship with confidence and esteem, we don't want to come off as narcissistic. We do have to understand there are healthy levels of narcissism. There are healthy levels of integration of I'm the most important and I know others are going to be at times also. That is a normal, and often people I think would be better off striving towards having that integration and not downplaying or overdoing out of lack of self-confidence, kind of like the coming across like they have something they don't. That's not going to turn you into the actual, which is the personality disorder. One of the subtypes is like malignant narcissism, where the person is like tyrannical, thinks everything's about them, puts other people down. Like that would be a huge jump and is not going to happen if you're the person that goes, I really love myself. I love these things about myself. I'm really confident in these areas. And I know what areas I'm not confident in. And I actually have, I'll show you if this is video, I have these little posters. They get unstuck. I usually bring them out when I'm working with teenagers, but I have it huge for my office.
Wow.
So it says, confidence is a feeling of self-assurance arising from one's appreciation of one's own abilities or qualities. So that I think is, you can get these on Amazon, but I think having this like as a reminder is I feel confident in that, and other people may not view it that way. Like other people, it would be kind of a weird example, but like let's say I gave a speech, I've done keynotes before, it would be more rare than common for somebody to come up after and be like, you didn't do well at that. That would be wild, because at self-development conferences most people are positive. But if they were like, oh, I didn't like this or that, that doesn't have to change my view of myself. The more self-esteem and self-worth and internal validation we're able to give ourselves, I don't actually, and this is not to sound egotistical, I actually don't care what other people think about me. Caveat, if there's somebody I deeply care about and I'm being experienced in a way I'm not intending, that I do care about and I want to tend to in the dynamic. But as an overall, when I make decisions, I'm not filtering how is this going to make me look and what are other people going to think about me, unless my intent is I want to be experienced a certain way. It's not out of low self-esteem. Oh, I can't do that because what if so-and-so doesn't like me? I'm not everybody's cup of whiskey. And I'm okay with that because somebody else might have a specialty where that is their cup of tea. So knowing I can have these skills and I can love myself for reasons other people may not agree with, and that doesn't need to knock my confidence, my self-esteem, or cut off that two-way street.
Have you always felt that way?
Yes, actually, well, okay, so story time, a brief story time, the TLDR. I believe, even from when I look back at little videos, I went to a private school where in third grade we had to do these things called chit chats. And I'm so glad my teacher, Miss O, made us do those because she was getting us practiced for public speaking and being poised. And we're like 9. So there was a little bit of that, like, oh, are other people going to think this? But there was another, there's like probably a subset of people in the class that hated it. And then there was a subset of people that were like, wow, look at me discovering the new skill that I was given the opportunity to hone. And I was looking back, clearing out from my parents' house a long time ago, these chit chat videos. And I'm like, hair flip, sass, this. Of course, I don't remember it unless I look at it. But I was like, I guess I have had it all along. And I did feel more sure of myself in certain areas. And then having gone to such a small school, I got bullied in middle school. It is common, obviously, in middle school for girls to start having like social problems. It's part of evolutionary psychology and trying to like be high up in the food chain socially, so to speak. So I feel like I got my confidence knocked and taken away, not only because of the hormonal changes of puberty and being like, who am I in the world of adolescence? And adolescence lasts from about 9 to 25 mentally, and most of updated research, it's not just your teen years. So all of that combined took kind of away my confidence, and I lost touch with it. Adolescence was super rough for me. Then I got back on the right for me, like aligned path. And then I feel like ever since then, and working away from people pleasing, working towards understanding family dynamics that served or didn't serve me anymore, how people functioned in the world, what my purpose was, honing those skills, I got my confidence back in a way that I felt I had earned it, reconnected with it, and was able to give it to others. So it's so deeply seated in me now. I don't think it would ever leave. And I know the universe has tested me along the way of like, are you sure about that? And given me certain friendships and relationships or business experiences that I'm like, ugh, this doesn't feel good or aligned, or this isn't my most authentic self. I can't be my most confident, or I thought I could, but it turned out I couldn't. When you have it, it takes a long time to get it and to internalize it. But once you have that level of self-esteem, self-worth, and self-confidence you desire, it takes a lot to get out of it. And you're so much more protective of that energy. You wouldn't want to give it away to just anyone. So I know that I hope that answered your question. And in part, I know for me, getting asked that question was like a further affirmation of like, yeah, I feel like I always have in some ways been this type of way, but I didn't always have the esteem or the worth to exude that confidence.
That's really interesting. I hope you're enjoying this episode of the Grateful Podcast. I'm interrupting to let you know that it would mean the world to me if you could share this episode with someone that you think would enjoy it, or leave a review down below so I can learn what I can do better and what I'm doing well with this podcast. It's a passion project, and I really want it to turn into something that helps people everywhere. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you enjoy the rest of the episode. Yeah, I'm so fascinated with the cultivation of self-worth and confidence because it's something within us, but it's very interesting how outer events end up impacting our view of ourselves. On last Thursday, I got to see Jay Shetty talk live
Wow.
in Boston. It was amazing. My mom and I went. Very cool experience. And he talked about the inner and the outer world, and how we're constantly sacrificing what we want inside for our outer world when we actually are living our entire life within this inner world. And it's interesting just hearing you talk how outer things ended up affecting your inner world. But I think living inside out is what I've found to be so impactful and so amazing for my self-worth and my confidence. It's like that self-worth comes inside, and that exudes the confidence, the real confidence, not the confidence that's going to be mistaken for narcissism or whatever.
Yeah, like bravado. Yeah. And I would say how the lucky ones, if you will, the children of parents who instill worth and instill value and instill esteem, like other esteem, me giving it to my child, or their experience of it, like their self-worth. I am responsible for co-creating and educating and modeling for my daughter self-worth, self-esteem, both how I treat myself and how I interact with her, and what I guide her on how she interacts with the world. So if we had parents who had done their own work or were at least willing to do their own work when presented with the opportunity, we are more likely to have watched them interact how they did with themselves or with our parent or other parent, their spouse, or if they're remarried or dating, whoever they were interacting with in their adult world. When we observe that, we take little bits of it, right? Like an inverse rainbow fish where we're like, I like that, I like this. But sometimes we also integrate things we don't necessarily like or aren't the best thing for us. They're not in our highest and best good. And it's a byproduct of being in an environment where there's like single state learning where we have one event and that was enough. And that's what trauma typically is, like that was enough for me to learn. Or we can have it be a multi-state experience where over the years we learn a certain pattern. And that's kind of how learning a language would work as an example. We're not just going to speak Spanish once and then be fluent. Most people aren't like that. It takes a lot of practice and it takes a lot of memorization. So if you think about relationship skills, self-esteem, self-worth, inherent value, how we talk to ourselves, how our parents talk to themselves when they make a mistake, did they scream at us when we spilled something? Were we allowed to be our authentic self? Did our parent have the view that we were a self-extension of them? A lot of our template for the way that we view ourselves in the world, in analysis, almost all of it, is the responsibility and belongs to the ages of 0 to 3. And how we were parented and how our infancy went when a lot of those neuronal connections were being made. And then from 9 to 25, parents get a second chance if we really messed it up the first time to go in and prune and help our teen into adulthood prune those connections because they might not be beneficial anymore, or they might need to have kind of different layers of protection against criticism. When kids are little, they will shoot you straight. They'll be like doing a cartwheel, like, my parents are getting divorced. And you're like, wow, okay, like off you go, little Kate or whatever. And then when they get into teenage years and into adulthood, because of hormonal shifts and the incidence rate of depression and anxiety before age 12 in boys and girls is the same. And then after 12, the research shows it switches from 2 to 1. So girls have a higher likelihood, in main part because of how estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone are shifting and functioning constantly. Women go on a 28-day cycle. We view the world in 28-day time. Men, we all have testosterone. Men, because they're primarily filtering through testosterone, view it like day to day. And you have, because of testosterone, like 4 layers to criticism. So adolescence isn't typically as difficult. Obviously, we have to add in social media. Kids aren't just getting bullied at school now, they're getting bullied online. There's no break from it. We could go on and on about that, the view of validation from others. But at the core, what you're describing, if your parents get it right and they teach you how to safeguard against when other people try to tear you down, and your parents are the ones who are responsible for, please show me your authentic self. It's my job to help that come out in the world, and you can always come to me. But not all of us had those kinds of parents. Some of us had the kind of parents who were like, you'll do as I tell you to do. You'll be who I want you to be. And Dr. Mate talks about this a lot as well. Children are forced often to face, do I pick attachment to my parents or attachment to my authentic self? And often the sacrifice is, I'm not going to pick my authentic self if it means I don't get the love of my parents. Children die without love. We've known this from the wire monkey experiment from years ago. They did this test where babies got all the nurturing, the love and affection, but they didn't get I'm going to butcher it because it's been a while since I've read it, but essentially one of the variables was missing from one of like the cloth monkey, but most babies went to that rather than the wire monkey, who obviously wasn't warm and nurturing, but they got fed from. So they would go eat from the wire monkey, even though that's literally nourishment. You would die. Obviously, we would die without food for a certain amount of time. They got that emotional nurturing. Children need that. And actually, human species are born typically 3 months too early, but the female body cannot carry a baby until a year old because we would probably die. Our hips are not wide enough for that, and it would just be too much for our organs. So we're born 3 months already premature, defenseless. Babies can't even hold their neck up without us. They don't know they're a separate self from their parent till 3 months old. So think about how many parents just are like, oh, it's 6 weeks, here you go, be with a stranger, I'm going to go back to work. They don't even know they're a self. How would they have a sense of self? So knowing all of this research is obviously very confronting for a lot of parents, and I understand it can elicit like concerns about worth and guilt and everything else. But if you don't know what you don't know, the best time to correct it is as soon as you learn what you wish you knew sooner. So
Right.
knowing that self-esteem and self-worth and that view comes from our really deep first infant experiences, 0 to 3, and how we go to our parents throughout the world. Our parents' role is to help us be our authentic self. And ideally, we don't teach them, you have to sacrifice me loving you for your authentic self, because I love you for your authentic self, even if it's not what I may have envisioned for you. Teach me who you are. I'll be the person who learns, you be the teacher, and I'll also help guide you at the same time.
What happens if that's not the case? What are the consequences of that?
That is primarily why I will have my profession forever, as I joke. The consequences can be very grave if parents aren't aware how much of the world's their child's psyche and template of the world is set it from 0 to 3. So the cost can be attachment wounds and attachment disorders. They're definitely trending on social media to talk about like anxious attachment or avoidant attachment or disorganized attachment. From the psychoanalytic view, those disorders are created. They're not in a DSM, so using the word disorder is like, it's just not the way that the ideal is how I'm defining it. They are created because parents aren't attuned to their child. So we could have an attachment to somebody, but if we're misattuned, we don't take their bids for connection. So if you're dating somebody or you have a friend and you're looking at something online and you turn to them, you're like, oh my gosh, that's so cool. They have one of a few options to attune to you. Oh yeah, what is it? Matched bid for connection fosters attunement. A baby cries, the parent goes to them and picks them up. That fosters attunement. Oh, that's so cool. Look what we're doing. Or look what I found. And they don't answer right away, but then you look and they have an AirPod in and you kind of point and they go, oh, sorry, did I miss something? It's still a connection, but you had to do a little more work to get it. That can create attunement. But again, there's that, okay, I have to do a little more work to get it. That can create anxious or avoidant tendencies. Or if the parent totally misattunes and actually goes, I heard you and I don't care what you have to say, ooh, or lets you cry
Yeah.
it out or anything like that, that ruptures attunement. And without any repair, that's where the disorganized attachment view comes from of, I want you near me, but I'm so afraid of closeness because I don't know if you're going to stay or go. And I learned to be self-reliant, but then when I get close, I really want to lean in. But it's like a kind of a double scoop sundae with anxious and avoidant tendencies. And babies learn, I don't know if you're coming back or not, so I'm going to cling, or I don't know if you're coming back or not, so I'm just going to be hyper independent and not need you. And we've known this from other studies, like Mary Ainsworth, the strange situation experiment, where caregivers come and go in the room and the baby is placed with strangers or not, and then viewing securely attached or insecurely attached as the other umbrella category. How do those babies respond? So the cost can be very grave if we're not understanding. If we get the first 3 years right, it's really hard to mess kids up past that. But a lot of
Huh.
parents have the view they're just little, they're just a baby, they're this inanimate object on a shelf, metaphorically. And babies need you all day. And infancy in the brain lasts 0 to 3. They need you all day. They're waiting for you to come home. I hate having to be at work, but I had a personal situation that called me to be at work more than I was planning on because my daughter's still younger than I would have liked before I went back as much as I had to, but I'm making it work. And anytime I'm home, it's just me with her. I'm not on my phone. I'm not distracted. We don't have screens. I'm fully attuned to her. So I make the most of the hours I have to be away working really hard, balls to the wall. And then when I clock in, it's boobies to the baby. So that's like the shift that I've had to make. And any parent, gender regardless, can make that shift. When you're present with your child, again, time is the most precious resource. You will not regret that you spent more time with them. You will look back sometimes, and we see this from people on their deathbed. I wish I would have spent more time. Being with your kid is just like being in the pediatrician's office is just as important as being in the boardroom, or having your parents be with you and wanting you to spend time with them is just as important as them going out and having their own life. And obviously there's a balance to strike with this, but when we can understand a lot of where our insecurities or low self-esteem or confidence or struggles in relationship, getting close or being close, either of them, like I can get close but I can't stay close, or I'm really afraid of it but once it happens I'm okay with it. A lot of that from an analytic view stems from our infancy and our early childhood experiences. So it's not like thanks a lot mom and dad or parent set, but a lot of it can be attributed to them because they're our first model of what relationship is.
Right. It sounds like, well, to be a good parent, you have to give a lot of love away. You give a lot of love to your kids. And I see in modern culture a timidness, a fear of giving love away, of being open to showing love to other people. So that's a little worrying to think about. People are uncomfortable with giving love away. Oh, how can we shift that? Because that's a really important thing, to shift culture to being more open to giving love away.
I think letting go of the expectation that we should or ought to receive something in return, and parenting is one of, if you do it well, it's one of the greatest examples of self-sacrifice, not to a martyr level, but it is the greatest example of I'm going to pour into this dependent, truly dependent being and hope that it's more than enough, or at least just enough, for them to feel sustained and fulfilled and have that sense of self moving forward. And parenting is not a thankless job. At times it's tough because it's not the same level of appreciation that you get at work for there's no raises or anything like that. There's more costs usually than gains in the beginning, especially. It's understanding the gratitude, much like your podcast and the mission of it. The gratitude comes later. But if we struggle with delayed gratification, or we can't disconnect from I can do something without the hope of something in return. That piece is like evolutionary psychology. When I expend a resource, I expect something back in return because it's survival mode almost. We are evolved now as species, most of us. We can work away from that narrative, you owe me, and we can work towards I'm doing this because it's the right thing to do, it's the kind thing to do, it is the loving thing, the attuned thing to do, and I'm not expecting something in return. That's the selfless parenting, and also teaching the child they matter, and for that child to learn that they matter and they will always matter, even if it's just to the parents. That can help them withstand any storm metaphorically in their life, knowing that they have a home base somewhere. And for those of us who didn't have that, that's where therapy can kind of be a form of parenting in a pseudo way that people never had. We have the same time slot every week, usually. We have the same office, so it's not a chaotic environment. We have a level of what I call containment, where it feels comforting, whether it's Zoom or in an office. I feel safe here. I feel like I matter. I feel like my opinions matter. I get this person who's attuned to me. They're not going to make it about themselves because legally and ethically they can't. And also they're trained not to. And I get to work on myself and have somebody view me in a way with positive regard and be proud of me, but also help me make certain decisions. And I know they'll always be there because legally we can't abandon you. So that's another great part of healing attachment. What a great gift if you didn't have parents who nailed it, or you've tried to repair that relationship in adulthood and they're unwilling or unable to for whatever reason. Therapy can be that pseudo relationship, or allo parent, if you will, the same way a nanny or a godparent is when they're younger. They're an allo parent. They're a stand-in, never a replacement. They're a stand-in for that parental bond, and that no matter what. And this is what little kids do. You'll see them kind of look for their parent when they feel safe enough to go off and explore, and then they'll sometimes come back and run. It's called emotional refueling. We, in my view, we do that with our therapists in a way when we feel safe enough to go venture out in the world, and we do that and we come back for our hour a week of therapy. We refuel, we get that attainment or attunement and containment, and then we have the confidence to go out and go into the world knowing at least one person feels like we matter as much as we feel like we matter is, I think, the greatest gift most anyone can give themselves.
Yeah, yeah, 100%. I've never had therapy. I feel very lucky to have been raised amazingly. My
You
parents,
sound, yes,
absolutely
yeah,
amazing.
they
Um,
nailed it.
they sure did. Yeah, I'm so grateful. Um, but yeah, the benefits are extraordinary. Thinking about what you said there more toward the beginning, when we were talking about giving love away, I was thinking about how uh, my hypothesis is that you need to love yourself in order to give that love away. Am I correct with that?
Yes, and that is probably the age-old question that everybody tries to answer. How do you love yourself? My theory is in order to love yourself, you have to like yourself. In order to like yourself, you have to know yourself. And in order to know yourself, you have to accept the good and bad quote unquote parts of yourself. So the light and the shadow, the parts you're very proud of and hope that people notice in you, and the deep down tucked away parts that you would be mortified if anyone discovered about you. When you can go inward and bring those in, and the exiles and parts work, you can integrate your exiles and not shame yourself for life experiences you've had that if you knew better you would have done differently. I don't really believe in mistakes. I believe in how I just described it. If I own that about myself, what you own about yourself another person can't use against you. So if I have that and I'm on the journey to the self-knowledge and I like myself and I love myself, I can give love to others and others can love me. One of my favorite analytic papers, the title is "You're Giving Me What I Need, but I Have No Place to Put It." And to translate that to apply to this question, if I don't know what love feels like, how could I receive it? Not that I can't try to or that others won't try to give it to me, but literally, I don't have any place to put it. I don't have a space on the psychological shelf for love of self or love to others or love from others. So being able to do that work, I don't think people can't be in a relationship till they love themselves or whatever else, but the risk is the quality of the relationship you get into if you don't love yourself is going to mirror the treatment you think you're deserving of. If you don't have self-esteem, if you don't have self-worth or self-confidence, you're going to basically lick crumbs off a knife and think it's a 5-course meal.
That's a good analogy. I've never heard that one before.
It's like survival, and that's not how people really want to be feeling love or giving love. They want it, like you're saying, freely. If this comes back to me, that's I think one of the inadvertent pieces of advice to come out of this to answer your question. Love in a way that if you give it away, you hope it comes back to you tenfold, but you understand it might not. And that's the purpose, is not doing something to get it back. The purpose is doing something to hopefully change someone else's life and how they view themselves.
Beautiful. And I think that both of us are on a mission to do just that. I think from what I've seen with you, you're doing a pretty good job.
Thank you. I appreciate
Yeah.
that. I try.
So to end this off, I always just center it back on the idea of gratitude, because one of the main reason I started this podcast is because, and I kind of started with questions related to this, is I'm an overachiever. I'm always trying to do things. I'm very ambitious. And I realized that true fulfillment, which is the goal in life, doesn't come from being too ambitious. It also doesn't come from being too grateful is a stretch, because there's gratitude's amazing, but it doesn't come from complacency either. It comes from what I've called the duality of gratitude and ambition, where you're grateful for right now while pursuing things in the future. And so as you have a baby, you have everything you're working on, how do you stay grateful for the present moment while pursuing all of that?
I think the answer is in the question. I I used to hate mindfulness. I'll be so for real right now. And I was told by a therapist many years ago, she's like, and that's exactly why you need to practice it. Because I was like, I don't have time for it. And she's like, oh, geez, like you're the exact person. And I do the same thing to my clients now. They're like, I don't have time. I'm like, you don't have 5 minutes in your day for yourself. And they're like, okay, well, when you frame it that way. So I think for me, having a child and having a baby, and I didn't even know that I could have a baby. So I was told I was infertile, and I was actually going to my own analysis to grieve motherhood, that it wasn't going to happen or it might look different than I thought. And I ended up finding out like 8 weeks in, I still see that therapist years later, but I ended up finding out like 8 weeks in that I actually was pregnant. So like talk about divine intervention, miracle, whatever, like truly was like, okay, it's just never in my cards. And then surprise. And I was like, oh my gosh. In some ways I was like, my life is over. And which is true. Parts of my life were, but parts of my life were just beginning. So I look at her every day and I am in constant awe, and I might cry as I talk about this, but I'm in constant awe that she picked me to get to slow down and like experience the world with her. and teach her how to love and get to teach me. She taught me a lot of how to love myself because I thought I was in a healthy relationship, and maybe we can do a part 2 episode on that because I know you touched on that in your intro and I took us on many directions, so I apologize, but also take ownership that I caused that. We have a lot more questions. I stay grateful by looking at her and going, I probably would have stayed because I'm such an overachiever. I read all the books. I do this for a living. I can make it work. Could I? Yeah. But it was costing me my sense of self-insanity. And that shift when I became pregnant was so obvious. I needed to not stay with who I was with. It was a slow grief, but also so joyous that I knew what was on the other side was getting to become a mom. And I wanted it so badly. I actually didn't want it because I was like, it's the biggest thing you'll ever have. I don't want to mess it up. Like, I wasn't at the point in my career where I can slow down. There was all this fear. And I was like, everything happened just as it was meant to. Even the most painful moments I had to go through led me to a different version of myself on the other side. And because I was so open, I was like, break me in the ways that I need and let this show me how I need to be different, or what's meant for, where I'm meant for more, or where I might be afraid to step into, but it's really my purpose. I didn't sit in a victim narrative. I didn't sit in a victim mindset or woe is me or this is being done to me. I'm like, I can do something about this. I can make this work. I can make this have me grow and be a positive experience, even in the darkest times. Like, most people don't want to be going through a separation and a divorce while they're pregnant and postpartum. But I knew I needed to get out, and I was never going to model for her what my dynamic had shifted into. And she had me escape in many ways, I would say, and I'll be forever grateful. And I didn't have her for that purpose. So I don't feel guilty saying that, because the universe was like, here you go. And I would say, for anyone listening, even if you haven't gone through that, hopefully haven't gone through that, being open that things are happening either for you or to you. And your mindset of viewing that either makes you the victim or makes you the victor. So if I had viewed, why is this happening to me? Woe is me. I don't know what my life would have been like. It wouldn't have been this, I can tell you that. But instead of that, I viewed it as, okay, this is clearly going to teach me something, and I've made it through every one of my bad days so far, so I think I'll get through this, and I'm more than elated and grateful to be on the other side. So I hold that gratitude and keep going, because I look at her and she's meant for so much more, and to be able to be her mom and her model for whatever she wants in life, and help her discover her authentic self and have her teach me that, is like going to be the coolest thing every day of my life till whenever I'm not meant to be here anymore.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. I really enjoyed this conversation. Thank you, Jason, for
Yes, thank you,
setting this
Jason.
up.
Thanks, buddy.
It's so awesome. Yeah, I took so much away, and what you said about a part 2, I'd definitely be down sometime. So yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Grateful Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, it would mean the world to me if you could either share this episode with friends and family who you think would enjoy it, or leave a review down below on what I can do to make this better for you and for other listeners. All that would just help me be able to spread my message of gratitude and living a purposeful life. I hope you have a great day. See you soon.